Have you ever experienced one of those days? A day where you haven't actually engaged in any strenuous physical labor, yet you feel more exhausted than on the days when you were drowning in work from sunrise to sunset. It's a peculiar sensation. You appear to be free, you have no immediate tasks at hand, yet your mind is anything but free. It's caught in a relentless cycle, ruminating over what you should be doing, where you should even begin, or perhaps wondering if you should simply stop and rest. That unsettling sensation is not caused by external chaos or a lack of silence in your environment. Rather, it stems from an internal lack of clarity. And this is exactly where so many people misinterpret the true essence of peace. We are often conditioned to believe that peace is synonymous with emptiness, a state where there is nothing to do, no thoughts to process, and no burdens to carry. But in the reality of our modern existence, that kind of emptiness is almost impossible to maintain. Even if it arrives for a fleeting moment, it rarely provides the stillness we crave. The weight on your heart isn't actually the workload itself. It is the agonizing state of not knowing exactly what you should be doing at this very moment. Welcome to Simply Mindful, a sanctuary for those who seek to learn, to evolve, and to grow throughout the entirety of their lives. I am Maya, and I am deeply honored to have you here with me today. If we look deeper into the architecture of our lives, we find that true tranquility does not arise from having nothing. It arises from the wisdom of priority, knowing what is essential, knowing what requires immediate action, knowing what can wait, and most importantly, knowing what you do not need to carry right now. This form of clarity doesn't necessarily make your life easier instantly, but it prevents your consciousness from becoming scattered. It stops you from being pulled in 10 different directions simultaneously. It liberates you from the exhausting cycle of redeciding the same thing every 5 minutes, and it puts an end to the self-sabotaging voice that blames you for not making enough progress. From a neuroscientific perspective, the human brain doesn't become fatigued simply from hard work. It becomes fatigued due to cognitive clutter, the accumulation of unfinished decisions, lingering thoughts, and unanswered questions. Every open tab in your mind consumes a significant amount of your emotional energy without you even realizing it. This is precisely why some individuals can handle an immense workload while remaining remarkably stable and composed, while others do almost nothing, yet remain perpetually stressed. The difference lies in the level of internal clarity. When the mind is clear, it knows exactly where to direct its energy. The peripheral noise naturally fades away. You don't have to force yourself to shut it out. It simply loses its power because there is no mental space left for distraction. Many people attempt to find peace by stopping everything. They stop working, they stop thinking, they stop consuming information. While this might offer temporary relief, if the underlying lack of clarity remains, the silence only amplifies the internal noise. The voice of anxiety becomes louder. The voice of comparison becomes more persistent. The haunting question of, what should I do with my life, echoes more fiercely. True peace, therefore, is not about silencing all sounds. It is about choosing to listen to the most important voice in the room right now and letting everything else fade into the background. Observe yourself on the days when you felt truly grounded. It likely wasn't a day when you had nothing to do. It was likely a day when you knew there was one primary task and you were fully engaged in it. Even if other responsibilities were waiting, your heart didn't fracture. You didn't rush. You weren't frantic. This is because you had a center. And this center doesn't come from sitting still for hours. It comes from having a definitive answer to a very simple question. Right now, what is the most important thing for me to do? This question may seem ordinary, but when asked with absolute sincerity, it possesses the power to prune away distractions more effectively than you can imagine. It grounds you in the present moment without the need for complex rituals or waiting for the right mood. Many of us believe that if we are confused, it means we aren't ready. But the truth is that clarity does not arrive before you are ready. It arrives when you have the courage to pick one thing and do it, even if you aren't 100% certain. The moment you make a decision, even a difficult one, the tension in your nervous system begins to dissolve. This isn't because the problem has vanished, but because your brain has acknowledged a direction, and having a direction will always be more peaceful than drifting at a crossroads. If peace is not emptiness, but clarity, how then do we cultivate that clarity in a life filled with burdens, expectations, and noise? The answer doesn't lie in exerting more effort. It lies in shifting our perspective and training a specific faculty that most people overlook, a faculty that opens up a space for clarity even when life is far from settled. This is the first gateway to a peace that doesn't require you to escape the world, and that is exactly what we are going to explore together in the next part. If we accept that peace is synonymous with clarity, the inevitable question arises: what exactly is preventing our minds from achieving that state? Why is it that even on days when nothing significant or catastrophic is happening, our internal world still feels chaotic? The answer is profoundly simple, yet deeply layered. Our minds lack clarity because we are attempting to process everything simultaneously and at the same height of importance. In your mind right now, small errands, major life goals, urgent emails, and long-term aspirations are all competing for space. The trivial concerns of today are being weighed against potential anxieties that might not even manifest for several months. They are all tossed into your consciousness without hierarchy, without weight, and without a temporal frame. The human brain, specifically our prefrontal cortex, was not designed to operate this way. Our neurobiology is exceptional at focusing on a singular point, but it is remarkably inefficient at handling scattered distribution. The more you attempt to grasp every single thread at once, the more your brain feels like it's standing in the middle of a massive intersection. Traffic is coming from every direction, yet there are no signal lights. No one is telling you who should move forward and who should wait. This state of cognitive overload is what makes your heart feel restless even when you are sitting perfectly still in a quiet room. Many of us misunderstand the nature of distraction or mental fog. It isn't just about having too many thoughts. It's about having thoughts without a structure. It's jumping from one unfinished narrative to another, never reaching a resolution. Every unresolved thought leaves a cognitive residue, a subtle pull on your attention that quietly drains your energy. It's a silent, invisible tax on your soul. It's why you find yourself easily irritated, physically fatigued, or feeling as though you lack focus, when in reality, your mind is simply carrying an unsustainable load. Observe the moments when you felt the most serene. It wasn't necessarily when your life was perfect. It was when you knew you had one primary objective for the day, perhaps two, and you gave yourself permission to let everything else wait. Your mind begins to settle the moment it realizes it doesn't have to carry the entire world at once. It doesn't have to answer every question today. It doesn't have to solve every problem in a single hour. However, the modern world is designed to disrupt this. Our environment sends constant signals of artificial urgency. Every notification, every message, and every external expectation is engineered to feel vital. We've been conditioned to believe that if we don't respond now, if we don't think about it now, we will lose something forever. This fear of missing out or fear of mismanagement is one of the primary architects of mental clutter. It pushes us to keep too many tabs open in our consciousness, and as the tabs multiply, the voices in our head begin to merge into an indistinguishable noise. At this point, many people turn to productivity hacks, to-do lists, time management apps, or complex schedules. While these tools have merit, if used without the right mindset, they can actually increase the burden. Instead of using them to prioritize, we use them to accumulate. True clarity is not born from a long list of accomplishments. It is born from the courage to prune. It is the ability to look at a task and say, "Not right now." It is acknowledging that a matter is important but not urgent, and therefore it does not deserve to occupy your mental real estate at this moment. Many of us hesitate to prune our thoughts because we fear we are being irresponsible or bad people. But in reality, choosing to focus is a high-level act of responsibility. It is a somatic acknowledgement of your own human limitations. You are honoring the fact that your energy is finite and your time is a sacred resource. Peace is not the reward for a perfectly managed life. It is the result of a heart that is brave enough to stop carrying everything. When you cease the attempt to think about every problem at once, space begins to emerge, and in that space, clarity arises, not as a grand epiphany, but as a gentle, quiet realization of what your next step should be. This subtle voice is steady, but it can only be heard when the surrounding noise is hushed. So how do we begin to hear this voice? How do we separate clarity from the pressure of the future? That is what leads us to the relationship between clarity and the present moment, and how to place the future exactly where it belongs. Let's explore that in the next part. To be profoundly honest with you, the reason clarity often eludes us isn't because we aren't thinking about the present, it's because we are placing the future in the wrong location. We often hear the phrase, "live in the now," and it's frequently misinterpreted as a directive to ignore the future entirely, to stop planning, to stop anticipating, or to abandon our responsibilities. In the reality of a functioning life, that is simply not sustainable. As human beings, we must plan, we must calculate risks, and take responsibility for the outcomes of our choices. The true problem isn't the act of thinking about the future, it is the act of collapsing the entire future onto this single, solitary second. It's trying to carry the weight of 5 years from now while you are trying to perform a task right now, without separating your roles. Imagine you are trying to execute a specific action, but in the back of your mind, you are simultaneously burdened by questions like, what if this fails? If I choose this path, where will I be in a decade? Am I missing a better opportunity by doing this? These questions aren't inherently wrong, but they are being asked at the wrong time. Our brains are not neurologically wired to operate in two modes simultaneously. There is the strategic thinking mode, where we plan and evaluate, and there is the execution mode, where we simply do. For clarity to exist, these modes must alternate, they cannot overlap. When we attempt to merge them, our cognitive load becomes unbearable and clarity vanishes instantly. This is exactly why the more some people overanalyze their plans, the less they actually accomplish. It's not that their plan is flawed, it's that they haven't separated the thinking from the doing. A person who possesses true inner peace doesn't necessarily think less than others, they simply think in designated intervals. When it is time to think, they think with total intensity. They ask every difficult question, they assess every risk, and they evaluate every variable. But once a decision is made, they have the discipline to lay those questions down. They allow their heart and mind to be fully present in the act of execution. This is a crucial distinction. We often mistake repetitive self-questioning for thoroughness, but in reality, questioning a decision after you've already begun to act isn't being thorough, it's an act of internal sabotage. It erodes your confidence and fractures your focus. Living in the now, in its most sophisticated form, means respecting the role of the current moment. If it's time to plan, then plan with your whole heart. If it's time to act, then act without allowing future anxieties to interrupt your flow. When the mind understands its specific role for the duration of a task, it naturally settles. You don't have to force a state of meditation. You don't have to suppress your thoughts. Stillness arrives of its own accord. Many of you might feel that you can't focus at work or on your daily chores, but if you look deeper, the problem isn't your attention span, it's that you haven't given your heart permission to do just one thing. Your mind is still on high alert, scanning for better options or evaluating if your current effort is good enough. This high alert state keeps your amygdala, the brain's emotional smoke detector, active. True, powerful peace occurs when the mind no longer feels the need to constantly monitor and reevaluate itself every 5 minutes. It knows that if an evaluation is needed, there is a dedicated time and space for that later. This is why people who operate within a structured system often appear so calm. It's not because they are inherently more gifted, it's because they don't allow different types of mental work to contaminate one another. In our daily lives, we often do the opposite. We've made a choice, yet we keep the question window open in our browser. We are taking action, yet we invite fear from the future to sit right next to us. The result is that we are never fully anywhere. True clarity comes from knowing which questions to ask and, more importantly, which questions to set aside. When you begin to categorize your time, peace is no longer something you have to chase. It becomes the natural byproduct of a mind that is allowed to do its job without interference. But how do we practice this in a world that demands our attention all at once? How do we build the discipline to separate these moments without escaping into a cave? That requires a gentle kind of discipline, a faculty we will explore together in the next part. If clarity requires us to separate our moments, then we must inevitably confront a word that often makes us feel uneasy: discipline. The moment this word enters the conversation, many of us feel a sense of tension. We associate discipline with being forced, with rigid rules, or with criticizing ourselves for not being organized enough. In a world that is already exhausting, the last thing we want is more pressure. But the discipline that leads to peace is not a harsh, restrictive force. It is what I call gentle discipline. It is a protective boundary that guards your clarity so it isn't stolen by every passing distraction. If clarity is knowing what you should do right now, then discipline is simply the act of not letting other things interfere. It's not because those other things are unimportant, it's simply because it is not their time. The challenge for most of us isn't that we don't know what to do. It's that even when we know, we don't allow our hearts to stay with it long enough. As soon as we begin, another thought intrudes, a worry, a curiosity, a sudden urge to check a screen, and we drift away without even noticing. Gentle discipline is the practice of observing this drift without self-judgment. Instead of shouting at yourself, "Why can't I focus?" you simply say, my mind has wandered again, and then you gently invite it back. Think of it like guiding a small child back to their seat. You don't yell or use force, you simply lead them back with kindness. If you believe discipline means never losing focus, you will feel defeated before you even begin. But if you see discipline as the act of returning faster each time, then peace becomes a practical reality. True focus isn't just about closing doors, silencing notifications, or clearing your desk. Those help, certainly. But if the mind doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing, distractions will find a way in through your thoughts and feelings. Real discipline begins with a clear intention. Before you start any task, no matter how small, state your purpose. For the next 20 minutes, I will be fully present with this work. You don't have to finish it perfectly, you just have to stay with the process until it's time to rest. This sends a vital signal to your nervous system. It says there is a frame. It says you don't have to worry about the rest of the world right now. When the mind knows it isn't being forced to stay forever, it finds it much easier to settle into the present. However, there is a subtle trap we must discuss: the confusion between clarity and familiarity. Many people do the same things over and over until they feel a sense of stillness. But that isn't always peace.
often it is just habit. Familiarity feels safe because there is no risk, but it doesn't lead to growth. In fact, we often use our familiar routines as a place to hide from the difficult questions we should be asking. True clarity isn't always comfortable, it is honest. It knows what it is choosing, what it is sacrificing, and where it is going, even when the path is difficult. As we draw this journey to a close, remember that you don't need to know the entire map of your life to find peace today. You only need to know the next step. You only need to ask that one simple question. Right now, what is the most essential thing for me to do? The answer might be small, it might be ordinary, but if it is honest, it will lead you home every single time. Thank you so much for spending this sacred time with me. If these words have resonated with you, I invite you to join our community here at Simply Mindful. I am Maya, and it is my deepest hope that you walk away from this moment feeling a little lighter, a little clearer, and a little more at home within yourself. Until we meet again, stay present, stay kind to yourself, and remember that peace is always just one clear choice away.